Hi everybody, Radical Gardener. How are you today? Well, it has been a jam-packed year. You know, I'm counting the last few days as part of last year. I had to put little B down last night, which was horrible, absolutely horrible. And I hate to start, a video with that kind of statement or that kind of news, but I feel like that dog, it was such a gift to help me process grief over from the last year and I think a long time before that. Because I'm one of those people that just merely goes on my way, and I'm not quite sure I've ever processed any grief in my life. And that was a showstopper. It really was. I'm not going to go into the details, but I can tell you I feel different. Still grieving. I'm sure that's going to come in waves, and now it kind of opened up the door for Joe. I think it's important to talk about this because we all experience loss, and nobody's on a timetable. We've heard all this, but it's true. Nobody's on a timetable for when they're going to process anything, or, how they're going to grieve, or what grief looks like, or how it's going to feel. It is really personal. So, yeah. And, it got me to thinking about how my channel has morphed, because it started out as a prepping, for urban preppers, and, but in a way that was, there was no fear attached to it, and, how easy it was to have what you needed, and how you could just, about living in the moment, not panicking about what might happen next year and all of that stuff. And so it was really over the last 3 years, I've like completely shifted where my focus is, what, really eliminating a lot of fear. I didn't have a lot, but I had fear. I'm human, and, I stopped listening to certain channels, and, I was just started to go my own way and just go where the soul was telling me to go. And I was just, when you're living in the moment, really practicing that, it informs you to make very different decisions and to focus on different things. So I was I went from like prepping, and then of course talking about gardening and container gardening, and then definitely, C60, that's still a part of my dialogue, and I'm actually going to drop back in on that here a little bit more. Then I moved into talking a little bit more about, the political thing, until I realized it really wasn't about politics, and it was more about the anti-hero and, the raising frequencies, and us, aligning with what is coming down the pike, and then, and now I've been talking a lot about, spirituality, and of course everything is spirituality, but, just talking about different people that are really focused on it and write about it, who I think are really interesting. And then just opening to what is real, what is real, and, what is real is right now, and it is our connection to, or let me just talk for me. It's what is real for me is to rekindle the connection with the God energy. And so there's been a couple of books I'm reading, which I talked about a little bit. This is fantastic. It's called I Am the Word, and it is not religious. That's not my thing. If it's yours, that's good. I mean, everybody, however they find that connection. I want a very direct connection, so I don't need a book, or I don't need another human being to interpret my connection. So I would say I'm probably come more out of the world of the Gnostics, if I was going to label myself, which I've mentioned before. And then I've been reading these books, which are called, there's, I think 6 of them, and it's called Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East. And they're interesting. This is by Baird T. Spalding. I think what a lot of these books have in common is that these people are almost channeling this information. And it's very pure. So I'm going to read a couple things to you that were really enlightening for me. I love these passages. So here's one. So this is from Life and Teaching of the Masters of the Far East. And this was in the 1800s, late 1800s, that Spalding was hanging out with these guys. And they were actually in looking for these books that his great-great-grandfather had found in the Gobi Desert, called the Golden Book or something like that. And he had found one of them and then was informed there were 12 more. So he and 11 other scientists, explorers went with him, and they went to India and the Himalayas, and anyways, looking for these books. So they found these sages, and so these are just some of the things that the sages are sharing with them. Let's see, he said, the true mystery of life was God expressed through the Christ in the individual. He saw that in order to express this fully, he must withdraw from all forms of worship and worship God expressing through the individual and God alone. He saw, and he's talking about Jesus, he saw that in order to demonstrate this fully, he would be obliged to withdraw from those who had taught him, even though by withdrawing he should incur their displeasure. Ever try to leave the Catholic Church? This did not deter him for a moment. So Christ thought, I don't care, I'm going, right? I'm going to follow the message. This did not deter him for a moment. So steadfast was he in his devotion to his cause and the great service he saw he could render to the world by that devotion. He boldly taught that ignorance is the cause of all sin. And sin is explained that all sin is a disconnect from source. Because once you disconnect from the divine, from source, from the frequency, from the galactic center, that's when things begin to go haywire, because we forget where we are, what really matters. So he says, he saw that in order to practice forgiveness, or the science of forgiving, man must be enlightened to the fact that man has had the power to forgive all sin, all of it. So all sin, discord, and inharmony. That is not God who forgives sin, for God has nothing to do with the sin, sickness, and inharmony of man. That man himself brought these into being, and man is the only one who can erase or forgive them. So God isn't going to forgive you of your sins. We have to forgive each other. How simple is that? God didn't sin. God didn't create the sin. God had nothing to do with the sin. We did it, right? And sin, again, is through our disconnect to source. And if you don't like the whole God thing, then let's say Mother Earth. That sets you into a funky place, right? Like not recognizing the power and the responsibility and the connection to our dear mother. So it continues. I love this. I went, oh, this is up to me. This is about me. This is what I need to do. So he saw that man must learn that ignorance is disregard and lack of understanding both of divine mind as the creative principle and of his relation to that principle. He saw that man may have all intellectual knowledge and be versed in worldly affairs, yet if he does not recognize the Christ as the living, vitalizing essence of God within him, it's within all of us, he is grossly ignorant of the most important factor governing his life. He quickly saw the inconsistency of asking a perfectly just and loving Father to heal a disease or sin. It wasn't up to him. It's up to us. He taught that disease is the effect of sin and that forgiveness is an important factor in healing. That sickness is not punishment sent from God, as many believe it to be, but is the result of man's misunderstanding of his real being. If we really accept, know, embrace who we really are, how high our frequency really is, we can't do any wrong. He taught that it is the truth which sets free. The purity of his teachings has caused them to outlive those of his teachers. A little bit more. I kind of feel we need this right now. I know, may I be so bold as to think what we need, but I mean, come on, this is great stuff. This is, this propels us to a higher frequency if we're living this way. When he saw and asked perfection of man, he knew that he asked only that which man can live up to. Never asked more than what we could actually achieve. A great many have taken false comfort in the belief that they never can be as perfect as the Master is perfect. They argue that he was divine and that because of his divinity, he did marvelous works which no other member of humanity could possibly do, and that therefore it is absolutely useless to try. They say they are here with nothing better or more skillful or scientific with which to carve out life's destiny than mere human willpower. The great Master made it clear that while it did take some human willpower to start, the mere human will is not a great factor in the case, the great factor being divine understanding. How many times did he say, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free"? We have done nothing but limit ourselves. And you know what? Religion had a big part in it, because religion's created all this evil and fear and what have you. And Christ was the one and only. But remember, Christ was a man. Yeah, he was a good one. He was one of the best, but he was a man. And it's important that we know, and he's a prophet, but he was a man. And so if he was able to do all these things, he was telling us, you can do these things too. You just have to believe in source. You just have to get out of fear, right? So the moment men became free from the belief that they are the moment men become free from the belief that they are mere human beings subject to human laws of life and death and the limitations which human beings have imposed, that moment they will see that they are free from all human limitations and may become sons of God if they will. The moment they realize they are divine, they are free from all limitations and possessed of the strength of divinity. And man knows that this divinity is the place where being comes most directly in contact with God. And they know this divinity is not something to be injected into each from without. He is beginning to know that it is the very life in each and every man. Just saying. I have a lot of pages turned here. Okay. Here temples were built, not as places of worship, for the people worshiped every moment by the life they lived. So he's talking about where they are in the Himalayas. Living was, is it the Himalayas or the Gobi Desert? Anyways, he's talking about these ancient civilization that was in the Gobi Desert. Here temples were built, not as places of worship, for the people worshiped every moment by the life they lived. They worshiped every moment by the life They lived. Wow. Living was always dedicated to the great cause of life. And while they lived cooperating with the great cause, life never failed them. So these golden times back in our history, our ancient history, that's how people lived. You know, they were connected to source. So nothing ever failed them. During this time, it's quite common to find men and women thousands of years old. In fact, they did not know death. They passed from one accomplishment to a higher attainment of life and its reality. They accepted life's true source, and it released its boundless treasures to them in an unending stream of abundance. But I have digressed. Let us go back to the temples. They were places where written records of any attainment in knowledge of the arts, science, and history could be preserved for those who wished to avail themselves of them. The temples were not used as places of worship, but as places where the most profound scientific themes were discussed. The acts and the thoughts of worship in those days were carried out in the everyday life of the individual instead of being set aside for a particular group of people or at specified times. I say, let's do that again. You will soon find that unity of purpose and effort will be the most potent means to attain any desired end. Unity of purpose and effort. Instead of numerous people thinking in all directions and pulling in as many, they will think as one. Then man will know what it means to give a long pull and a strong pull and a pull all together. Then you will see that when the unity of will is set in motion, all things are possible. When man casts the selfish, satanic thoughts from his consciousness, and it's our satanic thoughts, from his consciousness, the battle of Gog and Magog will cease, and this will not be accomplished by any outside deity. So it's all up to us. What was it the Hopi Indian said? The people we are waiting for is us, or the teachers we are waiting for is us. I love that. So last, behind every cloud of storm or war, if men will only look, they will find God. They will find that God did not create the clouds of storm or war, that man created them. And if they will look beyond and see, they will always find God's hand upraised in peace. War is not sent or ordained by God. When men war with each other, they are entirely outside of God's province or power. They are entirely immersed in a man-made realm where God cannot interfere in any way, and they will be obliged to go on in this way until they see the fallacy of such strife. If one is sufficiently strong in his realization of God power, knows his ability to cooperate with that power, and does not cooperate, he can stop a war instantly. Up to us, folks. That's become really clear in the last year, hasn't it? When you think about it, there's been a huge coming together of like-minded people. Huge. And, you know, think about it, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that wasn't true. That was not true. And we feel close to each other. And you've just seen people come from everywhere, from every lifestyle and you know, ideology, and it's, I mean, like, you know, this whole movement that happened in the wake of our anti-hero Trump. You know, it's Buddhist and Amish and gays and blacks and whites and Hispanics and Native Americans and the Asian races, you know, unless they're rogue Chinese. But I mean, you know, wow. So I believe that where this is headed is that there will be no parties at the end of it. There will not be a Republican and Democratic Party. I think there will just be let the best man win. And we may see that. I may see that in my lifetime. I'm 70. So I think I may see that. And also, because I came from the 60s, everything in government was suspect. And I'm not saying that we were wrong to think that, but we just assumed, or I assumed, that there were no honest people in government. And I have come to see in this last 2 years, especially the last 2 years, and I've really been following, there are a lot of really good people in government that want the best for their people. There are a lot of them. Oh, there's a whole bunch more corrupt ones, but there's a lot of people that we elected in the office that care about us. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I just ignored it all and just thought they were all wacko. And it's not true. It's not true. So my homework has been I practice forgiveness, because anybody that's doing something really, really terrible, and we're seeing it now. I mean, if you're following Linwood's tweets, oh my God. And I'm not on social media. I just pull them up in my browser because I know that stuff's getting leaked out to him and he's passing it on. So I'm really just kind of hand picking what I'm listening to, because I'd rather spend more time reading this stuff and working on a high frequency for me and for maybe anything around me that it can affect. But, when you see what he's been tweeting out, and calling out what we've all known, what's happened to the children and how, people have been used and they've utilized the children to really keep these people in line. And so, we have to forgive those people. Believe me, they had it done to them. Nobody, most people, if not all, that are doing these terrible things had terrible things done to them. So where do we start? We got to start somewhere and start forgiving. Does that mean that people shouldn't be responsible for their actions? No, I don't think so. But I think you can hold people accountable at the same time that you're practicing forgiveness, because we are living in a society and it has a certain matrix and what have you. I mean, it's where I'm at now, and who knows what I might, think, a week from now, because I've been shifting so fast and so hard, and it's been difficult because it's really hard on my body. I mean, my frequency is getting tuned up quick, and I'm sure a lot of you are feeling the same thing. Which brings me to, hey, if you want Mary to do that third eye cleanse, some people off the YouTube channel here, some of my followers, they had it done, and they're really thrilled with the results of that. So please reach out to me and I will get that information to you. This book, I Am Word, it's pretty terrific. And what it is, the book is all about tuning up your frequency, getting you to hum at a certain place where you're going to be attracting and living in a very I don't know what the word is for it, positive, high frequency way. I don't know. There's one thing in here I wanted to say. How do you make do with the information that feels faulty in the face of a trial or a problem of real magnitude? How do you handle your faith when the opportunity for it seems to be presented in such a way that makes you want to run from it and to leave your faith in the bag by the front door? Where do you go when you get afraid, and how do you handle it? We will tell you now that when you create a trial, you are actually creating an opportunity for your growth. If you approach the trial as an opportunity for your growth and an opportunity for your learning. You will have magnificent experience with it to the extent that you don't allow yourself to go into fear. Then it becomes quite wonderful. Believe me, losing the two beings who I love the most, my dog and my husband, that is one hell of a trial, I can tell you that. I mean, I was literally screaming in my car. I was screaming. I've never, ever, ever done that before. I mean, it was so much grief. I was exhausted after that. And I'm sure I'm not done, but wowie zowie. What a year, huh, you guys? Okay, so enough of this blabbing. Garden's looking pretty good, but I'll tell you, that cold weather that came through here, that killed some things. It killed my moringa tree, because my trees are still young. It killed my mango tree. Everything else, I think, has made it. I had to cut a lot of leaves back. The banana trees will make it, but yeah. Oh, well, I'm going to find out like what I can grow, because the weather's going to change in Florida just like it's going to change everywhere else. So this is my learning curve, and it's going to be everybody else's learning curve too. All right, everyone. Radical Gardener, from my garden to yours. May your garden always grow. And I'm going to send you a ton of love, right? Okay. Love you to bits.